All right, everyone, welcome to the 7th workshop. Today, this is what we're going to be focusing on, summarizing our last meeting and going over the interview and judging process for your respective science programs, and also discussing like the attire and any sort of reminders that we have, because it's been a while since we last saw one another, so covering those updates. Again, the community norms are to keep focused on a common goal, strive to understand multiple perspectives, be willing to be disturbed and change your mind, critique ideas and concepts, not people, to share the space, to stay engaged in the work and respect each other's time, also recognizing when we need space, accept non-closure, and apologize and work to repair damage if you violate a norm. So this might be a little bit tricky since it's been over 6 weeks, I think, since our last workshop. But here are some photos that sort of are from the past presentation that can give some hints, but who can sort of summarize or touch on some things that we discussed in our last workshop together, which was the 6th workshop, I believe. Feel free to put it in the chat or come off mute and speak if you would like. So to read these photos here, this says point 2, designing tips, or part 2, designing tips. Picture how your poster will look with someone standing at least 2 to 3 feet from it. Avoid highlighting or light colors. Use clear fonts. Avoid ineligible fonts. This photo here says, how can I create my digital slides? This one here says Science Fair Project Quad Chart. And here's a title page. So what did we talk about in the last workshop? Any guesses? Any guesses? Quite all right. So what we did talk about at the last workshop was putting together and designing your project presentation. So whether that be within digital slides, with it be a physical poster, or if it was like a trifold, just sort of design tips to think about. We also talked about specific things that certain science fair projects would require. So for instance, NASEP is wanting this quad chart to be added to their first slide that has the main information there, including like what the research question is, what the methodology is, the data analysis and results portion, and what the interpretation and conclusions are. They discussed photos and how photos, if they're included, needed to be cited, or if you're including photos that have people, to not necessarily have the entire person's face in view, but could be from like the side, or that didn't include their face, so it could be from the back as well, to avoid photos with people unless it was pertinent to whatever it is that you're discussing, and also including additional photos for maybe your results. How can you create some of these presentations? There are a variety of options, including like Google Slides, which some of you may be using already for your project because of the research guide. You either chose to use Google Slides, Microsoft PowerPoint, or Keynote. So those are available with your iPads. Keynote would make sense since it's one of the apps for the Apple App Store. Other places and things you could use is like Canva if you wanted to use some of the clip art and things like that from there, or get really creative. But those are some of the things that we talked about in the last workshop, was designing and creating that poster trifold, or digital presentation. So if you need a refresher on the contents of that, that is uploaded to our YouTube page. There's the link at the bottom. And what we're going to be focusing on today is the interview portion. So you've created this poster, this project, and you're going to be presenting it at the science fair or somewhere in your community at your science fair class or your science class. And the goal is to provide the opportunity to interact with the project finalists and evaluate the understanding of the project's basic science, interpretation, and limitations of the results and conclusions. So yes, interviewers do have your physical files, well, not physical files, but they have your files that they can look at and abstracts and things like that. But they really want to talk to you to dive further into your topic, maybe why you chose to look at this, what the inspiration was, what are some things that you would do differently, something that you found interesting. So it's an opportunity for them to learn more than beyond what is on paper, what's in your project, because only so much can fit in those projects, right? And so it's a great way to dive further into the topic and to highlight all of the work that you've done on this project. So with this, we're going to view this video.
Hi, this is Mohammed Hussein with the Denver Metro Regional Science and Engineering Fair.
Can I get a thumbs up?
Today I'll be giving you some...
Yes, we can.
You can hear it? Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to make the screen bigger.
Guidelines on how to prepare...
Oh, or not. Okay. I'm just going to leave it as is. Okay, great that you all can hear it.
Hi, this is Mohammed Hussein with the Denver Metro Regional Science and Engineering Fair. Today I'll be giving you some guidelines on how to prepare for your judge interview. I'll also give you some examples of questions you might be asked and how you might answer them. First, make sure to introduce yourself by telling the judges your name, what grade you're in, and what school you go to. If you did your project as a group, you should all introduce yourselves. Practice your introductions beforehand so you'll all know what order to introduce yourselves in. Then your interview will likely start with a minute where you can give a summary of your project. Interviewers might prompt you by saying something like, "Tell us a bit about your project." It's okay to script and memorize your summary. Just make sure you don't sound like you're reading off a script. Try to sound as natural as you can. Your summary should include the question being asked in your project, your hypothesis, an overview of your methods, the results of your experiment or project, and your conclusions. It's important to note that the judges will have already looked over your presentation materials, so they already know what your project is about. However, they're still judging how well you can summarize your project. And judges also see a lot of projects, so it is always a good idea to remind them what your project is about. Next, the interviewers will start with some common questions. These questions might have straightforward answers, but you should also use these questions to show off how impressive you and your project are. For example, an interviewer might ask, "How did you come up with the idea for this project?" Let's say you did an experiment involving plant growth. You could have a simple answer like, "I really like plants, so I did a project on plants." Or you could sprinkle in a bit more backstory and make your answer more impressive. For example, you could say, "I really loved the botany section of my science class last year. I bonded with my teacher over our love of plants, and after showing me some of her research from college, I was inspired to do a project on plant growth." This second answer is way more interesting and helps demonstrate your passion for your project. Let's try another example. What was the biggest challenge in completing your project? You could answer something like, "I had to learn Microsoft Excel to analyze data, and that was really hard." Or you could have a more detailed answer such as, "I didn't have much experience analyzing data, so I used some online resources to learn Microsoft Excel. Using Excel and some online guides, I learned how to do regression analysis on my data. I was unfamiliar with data analysis, but I learned a lot through this process. This answer also demonstrates your self-directed learning. After asking some of these basic questions to get the conversation going, the interviewer will start getting more detailed in their questions. To answer these questions well, you'll need to thoroughly understand your project. Read over your own presentation materials, like your research paper or your poster, to keep the details of your project in your head. As you go over your presentation materials, try to read it as if you were the judge. What sections pop out at you? Those are the details that the interviewers are likely to ask about. Obviously, these questions will vary from project to project, but I'll give an example question and provide a few pointers. An interviewer might ask, did you run the experiment under the same conditions every day? For example, at the same temperature, time of day, lighting conditions, and so on. You might need to remember that yes, you always ran your experiment at the same time of day, but you didn't control for temperature. You might respond like this. I did control some aspects of the environment, such as time of day and lighting conditions, but I didn't control for temperature. That'll definitely be something that we'll consider doing if we run the experiments again in the future. Controlling for temperature might increase the reliability of our data. Notice how we didn't just say no when it came to controlling our temperature. We took the judge's comment into consideration for future research. Your interviewer might also ask about some technical terminology used in your project. You should make sure that you understand all the technical terms used throughout your presentation. For example, a judge might ask, you mentioned that your research might be useful in the genetic engineering of plants. What is genetic engineering, and how would your project apply to it? You might respond with, genetic engineering aims
Sorry, as I'm looking at the chat, it's pausing the video.
to change the characteristics of an organism by changing its genetic material. My project focused on evolutionary biology, which is often applied in genetic engineering. Now that we've gone over some examples, here's a list of questions taken straight from the Denver Metro Regional Science and Engineering Fair Judging Guide. Shh, don't tell him I stole it. Try answering some of these questions as if a judge were asking them about your project. Now that we've gone over some example questions, here are some general tips. Avoid using scientific jargon that the interviewers probably won't understand. Or if you do use scientific jargon, at least explain what it means. Make eye contact with the interviewer. No, not that kind of eye contact. This kind of eye contact. You don't have to hold eye contact the whole time, of course, but make sure to make eye contact when the judge is asking you questions. It makes it seem like you're paying attention. Be enthusiastic. Take your normal personality and turn it up a few notches. That'll make you seem really engaged in the interview. Make sure everyone in your group speaks. It's weird to talk to a group of 3 students and only one of them is responding to you. And this goes back to something I said before, don't just say no or I don't know in response to any question. Say something along the lines of, I'll have to look into that later, or I'll certainly consider that in future projects. When you answer a question, always restate the judge's question at the beginning of the answer. This ensures that you've heard the judge's question correctly and creates a more professional answer. For example, if a judge asks you, how did you come up with the idea for this project? Before you state your full answer, you can maybe say something like, well, the process of coming up with the idea for this project was actually pretty straightforward. And then you go into your full answer. If you need to buy yourself a couple more seconds to think before you answer a question, use some of these strategies. Thank the judges for asking that question. Restate the question as part of your answer. You can also explicitly ask the judges for a couple of seconds to think about an answer. This will give you a bit more time to think about a polished answer, and you don't have to stumble through the words as you're thinking. And lastly, you can't prepare for everything. Just give every question your best shot, learn from the experience, and then improve for next time. If you'd like to see more resources on science fair preparation, make sure to visit the DMR SEF website. You can also reach out to us at Denver Science Fair at ucdenver.edu with any questions. Thanks for watching.
All right. So sorry about pausing, and uh, I hope that wasn't too distracting. What are some things that we learned from this video? Feel free to put it in the chat now that I have it opened, or you can also unmute. What are some things we learned from this video? Making sure to understand your project. Right. And that's because you're being asked questions about your project. So you're going to have to understand what the outcomes are. They might ask you something specific. So it's really important to understand all aspects of your project, including some of the jargon. They talked about jargon. What did they say about using scientific jargon? So some of the things about scientific jargon, you can use it, but if you're going to use it, make sure that you explain it. Also, if you're using it in your project, they're also going to ask you, they could ask you about it. So if you're using certain terminology within your project, be sure that you also understand how to explain it and are also using it to explain in your presentation, or avoiding it if it becomes too confusing. You may want to think of a different way to describe what it is that you're doing that might be um, easier for someone to understand, because judges come from all different backgrounds. They're volunteers. Some people might be super into what it is that your topic is, but some might not be uh, fully knowledgeable about it. So it's important to consider those things when deciding how you're going to present your work. Other things, let's see. Rudy put common questions we might expect from the judges. Yep, I put that in the slide too because it was pretty quick in the video. So we'll look at some of those a little bit further. And I think it's pretty helpful that they shared some of those common questions so that those can be used for practice. Yep, how to speak to a judge. I like the little graphic of the eye contact, like not literal eye contact, but making eye contact with the judge. Um, right. Making a summary, but making a summary script, but making sure that it's natural, and the natural part comes with practice, right? How to buy yourself time. Yep, I put that in my back pocket too. uh, Repeating the question. They also said it's fine to say if you need a moment to think, um, because that could be better than just blurting something out in the moment. Yep, yep. Camilla said that too. Yep, a lot was said about how to buy time, so that seemed like that was something that resonated. Great answers. All right, here are some of the things that I highlighted from the video, which you all already, many of you pointed out. Um, it's important to introduce yourself. Rudy had asked about whether previous NASEP students have gave any feedback if they introduced themselves in their own language in previous science fairs. I haven't heard from anyone. I could ask some students to see if that's the method that they took and what happened, but if that's part of who you are and that's also part of introducing yourself. So if you want to introduce yourself in your native language, then I fully support it. Um, I don't necessarily think that it's timed. If they say that you only have a very short period, then maybe stick with the greeting, or you can do it really fast. When I was learning my introduction and stuff in school when I was a kid, we used to like try to race each other on how fast we could say it. So, I mean, it's up to you, but definitely include your name, your grade, and your school. Um, and the interview time is generally short. So that summary is important, including what the topic is, your hypothesis, how you did it, what were the results, and the conclusion, creating a script to practice and making it seem like it's not from a script is important. Be prepared for questions. We'll go over those judges' questions list in a moment. But also reviewing your presentation and seeing what you think that a judge would look at or think to ask. So changing perspectives from being the interviewee to the interviewer is also a good practice as well. We talked about the scientific jargon, so not using it unless you plan to explain it, or if it's used in your project, then being prepared to explain it. The eye contact, um, avoiding eye contact could possibly read as being nervous, so you could look at their forehead if you're a little bit nervous or somewhere, as long as it looks like you're looking at their eyes. Being enthusiastic, I think the recommendation in the video is to turn your personality up a notch, so it makes it seem like you're enthusiastic. Um, Not just saying no or I don't know, but taking the time to think about a different response if that's your inkling to respond. Maybe asking for a moment or um, saying this is something that I'll consider for future projects. Again, restating the question because this could reinforce that you're interpreting what the judge is asking you correctly, and it also is good for buying time. And as the person in the video said, you can prepare, but you can't always prepare for every single thing. So giving it your best shot and being confident in that is very important. Hopefully those are all the things that you learned from the video. Feel free to let me know if there's anything that I missed. But all great tips. So other great interviewer tips is you have your project. So it's either going to be printed or digital, but you can refer to your graph. So it'll be named in some way. So you can say, for instance, in graph this or chart this, table this, I found whatever it is that you found. So referencing different parts of your project is great to just sort of reinforce the findings, but also reinforce your work. Some of these tips here are more specific to SARSEF. So for SARSEF, which has in-person presentations, you have your poster behind you and you're standing there for the block period, and judges will come by and talk to you. And so that's sort of similar to how it is when you're presenting a poster project. You'll stand by your poster and people will come by and ask you questions about your poster. They might just look at it and then you'll be prepared to answer any questions. But for the interviewer, that's when you'll want to like introduce yourself and things like that. And so there's usually about 3 judges that walk up to you during this period to discuss the poster with you, your digital slides. And it's important to speak clearly, slowly, and confidently. And a lot of that comes with practice, as I mentioned before, being positive, and also something that may not have been discussed in the judging is dressing nicely for the event. So this could be like business casual or something that you feel comfortable in. It doesn't have to be a whole suit and tie or a gown, but something that makes you feel and look professional. And something that I want to point out and that I appreciate is the American Indian College Fund comes out with this like a magazine every so often where they highlight important topics about preparing for college, different skills that are helpful when you're on your college path, scholarships, a lot of different things. But they did have an article that talked about sort of like what to wear. I think in the sense of this, it was more towards maybe working in like when you have a position, but it also is applicable for if you're going to an interview. And not only that, I like that they highlighted how um, a lot of our traditional wear and regalia can be included in that business attire, how you want to make it. And so, for instance, here are some things that actually, I'll have you all in the chat or unmute point out some things that you notice about their attire that may not be the norm in some cases. So, what are some things that you're noticing? Yes, Brandon.
Um, I would like to point out how for the men, I guess what their big fashion statement is the two braids. I find that very very powerful in some ways, you know? And then for the woman, I'm noticing like the jewelry, the dresses. I don't know, it's very subtle, but once you take a look, you can actually notice the things. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. So you mentioned the braids and also the attire, and that can be something that you incorporate to what you do in your interviews, whether it be tying your hair up a specific way, braiding it, or making it look how you feel um, powerful. Because something that you mentioned is seeing those braids brought forth a sense of empowerment towards you. So whatever that makes you feel empowered. If your hair isn't long, I'm sure you could do something differently to make yourself feel good about yourself. So thank you for saying that. And also the jewelry. Yep, I'm noticing the jewelry here, whether it be turquoise shells, beads, something that is making a statement, and it's also something that you could wear with your traditional regalia, but it's also something that you could wear with your business attire as well. Thank you. Anything else? Something I'm noticing is the shoes in this first photo here. This person's wearing moccasins. So I think that those look really cool and are also comfortable. Um, if you are comfortable wearing heels of any sort, then feel free. But if you want something that's comfortable, like moccasins, then feel free to use that too. Um, the second photo up on the top here, he's wearing um, loafers, I believe. Doesn't necessarily have to be that if you have some nice sneakers or something. It doesn't have to be full on business per se. Camilla said the print design braids and ribbon skirt. Yep, ribbon ribbon shirt, no skirt, but ribbon shirt as well. Up the top photo in the corner is also a ribbon shirt as well. Yep, both. And a nice belt. He has a beaded belt, I believe, in both photos. She has a really cool belt. You could have a jacket if you want, like a suit jacket, slacks. If it's cooler, I think that I don't have a Pendleton jacket, but if I had a Pendleton jacket, I would wear one like this because it's kind of getting cooler. As I say from Tucson, it's probably a lot warmer than other places. But yeah, so it doesn't have to be specifically these outfits, but I'm sure that you all have something that you can put together that will look really nice. If you have questions, you can let us know. I put the link to this magazine here as well, and they have an updated one as well. So this link kind of takes you to a few of the different magazines that they have online digitally. Great. So creating that elevator pitch is going to be important. We say it's an elevator pitch because it's if you get on the elevator with somebody and they're moving between floors, that's a very quick experience, but you can talk to somebody about a topic during that time. And elevator pitches, sometimes people use it in the sense that they're either have like a business idea that they want to talk to somebody about, or um, they're seeking support for something in some way. And so that's what we reference when we're saying this elevator pitch. But it's sort of a compact, concise way to talk about what it is you're presenting to somebody. And so it could be a great starting point to use your abstract to draft that science fair elevator pitch. So including or eliminating some of those technical words can be important because not everyone may understand, and trying to explain it can take some of that time away. Go ahead, Rudy.
Hey, Carol, I was just going to mention that I think that elevator pitch is the way you explained it is great. I also do wonder, like, if if students, the way that they think about it too might be like, I think of it now as like in tweets, right? That students are so much more familiar with like a tweet being something that's fairly concise. Like you can't use that many kind of characters. You're limited in the number of characters that you're going to utilize. So it's definitely got to be longer than just one tweet. But again, it's this whole notion of like, how do you send a message or convey an idea with a limited number of words? So again, similar to what Carol was saying with the elevator pitch, but just kind of putting it in that tweet context, which again, I probably shouldn't be speaking to because I probably don't know anything about tweeting, but just trying to provide some context, maybe.
Yeah, or like a very short video or something. Um, but you have a limited time frame to do it. So yeah, thanks for adding that additional context, Rudy. So in creating that very brief presentation, you're going to want to pull from your abstract because that's where it's already pretty concise, your abstract. Um, but you're going to want to include like your introduction. So that's going to add a little bit more time in there. Um, Thinking about any sort of technical words and not including that if it may cause confusion, or if you'll have to over explain what it is, maybe think of a different way you could explain it. But if you have to use it, then just be prepared to include that in your explanation. Putting it together because it will have to be edited. So just put everything on there, maybe have a family member look at it, a friend look at it, and have them recommend some sort of edits, or even pointing out parts where they maybe are confused because it may make sense to you because you're the one who did the project and everything and understand the background and the outcome. But if you're explaining it to somebody who doesn't know, parts might become confusing. So having somebody to practice with and get feedback with is important so you can make it clearer. And having something about 1 minute is good. Um, During that 1 minute period, it should cover sort of the high points of everything. And then the judge will ask questions afterwards to get more information. So yes, again, reiterating that it may take a few passes for editing, but that's perfectly part of the process and perfectly fine. And again, it might sound scripted as at first, but the more that you practice and fluff out the details, then it will become more natural, and you'll feel more confident as well because you'll have that understanding of what you're going to say. Um, you've talked to people, presented in front of people in practice, so some of that presentation fear might go away as well. And also, um, practicing with family and friends can also be a point where they ask you questions about your project and think of things that the judges might ask too. So here is an example of an elevator pitch. So do you know that 32 million Americans are taking statins for their high cholesterol? While statins may have shown to improve the heart function by reducing blood cholesterol levels, one of the major side effects associated with long-term use of statins is the development of muscle pain. My research focuses separating the cellular pathway leading to the beneficial effects and muscle toxicity mediated by statins in order to identify new drug molecules that only activate the pathway good for the heart. Using various cell-based assays, we have identified a drug combination that mimics the good effects of statins, but are devoid of the muscle toxicity associated with their use. So this is an example that was taken from Vanderbilt and the different pitches for discussing research. So in here, there's sort of like that attention grabbing statement. So did you know this about Americans? And there, I'm also pointing out this issue that's happening. So it's related to heart function. My research is important because it focuses on this specific cellular pathway. This is what we found. And so in reading this, I would have to practice because I feel like I stumbled on that a little bit. So my feedback would be to make sure that this is clear. I don't know if statins is a colloquial term or a term that everyone is familiar with. So folks might have questions about that, asking what is that? But in here, it discusses why it's important. So even without fully understanding what it is, you know that it relates to the heart and that having statins can be a positive thing here. And so from here, a judge or someone who's interested can say like, oh, okay, tell me more about this. Tell me more about the positive impact it could have. What are some of the future pathways or future projects that you could look at from based off of your current findings and go further into exploring what this topic is about. So there's this example here. Another example, it relates to it's a little bit longer, but it does relate to the turtle experiment that we've heard about in previous videos and discussed as an abstract. And I think we discussed it as a hypothesis. We discussed results and things for this topic. So this is going back to the turtle example with the crickets and the cantaloupe. So I'm reading this as if I was Muhammad. Let me take a drink of water real quick. Okay. So, hi, my name is Muhammad, and I go to school at Denver High School, fake school. As far as I know, I just put it in there because this is from the Denver Science Fair. Red ear slider turtles are remarkable creatures. However, their behaviors are not completely known. For my project, I aimed to better understand the food preferences of the turtles and how that impacted their behavior. More specifically, I hypothesized that the turtle would move across its tank faster than when presented with a cantaloupe. To conduct this experiment, I fed the turtle a cricket once a day for 1 week and timed how long it took to cross its enclosure to the food. I repeated the steps with the cantaloupe and calculated the average speed for the cricket and cantaloupe trials. As you can see here, points to whatever figures, graphs, or whatever's in the presentation. I found that the average speed for the cricket was 3 minutes and 15 seconds, which was slower than the cantaloupe average speed. The age of the turtle may have impacted the results, as studies suggest that younger turtles prefer protein, whereas the older turtles prefer vegetation. I will run this study again with a turtle of an older age to see if I get the same results. And so that was about 1 minute. And this portion here, at least the hypothesis and this end portion here with the conclusions and future directions. This was taken from the abstract that was created in workshop 5. And so it was changed a little bit. It's not just completely copy and pasted, because after reading it aloud, I thought that certain word choices flowed better when saying it versus reading it. So there are a few edits, but just to reiterate here that your elevator speech can be taken from the abstract, because the abstract is where you have all of that information, the purpose, the results, the procedure, all of that. PPRC. I also remember that from the past workshop too. All right. So from here, we're going to open another page, which is the judging guidelines. This will vary based off of the specific science fair that you sign up for. However, it's a good starting point just to look at, because I'm sure in certain ways it's similar. All right, so the page here, this is for high school. So you're graded off of the research question, 10 points here for SARSEF, and they want to make sure that it's clear and focused. It identifies the contribution to the field of study, and it's something that's testable using scientific methods. The second thing is the design and methodology. They look to see whether it was well designed, and different things such as the different variables are controlled for, defined, appropriate, and complete. They also look at data collection, analysis, interpretation. So there's a systematic data collection process and analysis. The results can be reproduced. The application of statistical methods and mathematical methods are appropriate for whatever it is that you're deciding to do, and there's sufficient data to support your conclusions and interpretations. They also have an area for creativity and potential impact. It says a creative project demonstrates imagination and inventiveness. Such projects often offer different perspectives that open up new possibilities or new alternatives. Similarly, a project's impact or potential impact on the world can be a key element to consider. If not clearly demonstrated or tested, does the student recognize and envision the potential impact? Judges should place emphasis on research outcomes and analysis in evaluating creativity and potential impact. So the bullet points here state project demonstrates significant creativity in one or more of the above criteria. So 1, 2, or 3. So either the research question, methodology, or data collection areas, or a project has impact or potential impact in its field and or in technology, economy, environment, or society. The next portion is the presentation. So there's a lot here about the presentation, but the interview provides the opportunity. Oh, so it's broken up here. That's why. So in terms of the project display, is it logical, organized? Is it clear? And is supporting documentation displayed? If you have that, the interview is more points than the project. And points for the interview are if it's clear, concise, thoughtful, responses to questions, understanding of basic science relevant to the project, understanding interpretations and limitations of results and conclusions, the degree of independence in concluding the project or conducting the project. So they want to make sure that you mainly did the work, recognition of the impact that it has, the quality of ideas for future research, and if you're doing something as a team, that folks contributed. So this is for a science project. They have other components here for an engineering project. I'm sure much of this is similar. Differences here I'm seeing are construction and testing. So prototypes, designs, which are more common in engineering design processes. But yeah, otherwise things are pretty similar. Are there any questions so far? I'm going to switch screens. Oh, and then in the chat, Rudy said, as you develop your research poster, often your abstract is a summary of your project, so your pitch could almost be thought of as a summary of your abstract. Yep. All right. And if you would like to look at the criteria, the link is here. Let me make sure I'm on the right screen. Yep, okay. So moving on here.
So
Yes.
in the chat, there was a question about what if you're unable to find a science fair locally?
There are, we can look at the different science fairs that are in the area. SARSF is one for the southern region area. I guess it depends on if you think that the timing is an issue or if it's a or if it's an issue with location because there's the National American Indian Science and Engineering Fair. That one is virtual, so people from anywhere can participate. That has a later deadline than the SARSA fair. So that's a possibility if there's an issue with participating in a fair that's closer to you. So there's that as an option. Does that answer your question? I guess I would need some more information about what some of the issues are with participating in a science fair locally. But if you can provide some more information in the chat. And I can answer some of those questions at the end too. Thanks.
I have to go. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Thank you. We'll send the
Bye-bye.
recording. Bye. Okay. I'm gonna go through some of these last questions and then I'll answer any science fair specific related questions towards the end. Okay. All right, so from the video, there were a list of questions that were included that were taken from the Denver Metro Regional Science and Engineering Fair judges recommended questions. So there's a few questions here. So how did you come up for this project? What did you learn from your background search? How long did it take you to build the apparatus? This could be something that's for like a prototype or whatnot. How did you build it? How much time, many days, could be in days or weeks or whatever, did it take to run the experiment? So it could be to grow the plant, to collect your data. How many times did you run the experiment with each configuration? How many experiment runs are represented by each data point on the chart? Did you take all data under the same conditions? That was something that was discussed in the video, in which they responded that they did, except for temperature wasn't considered. How does your equipment, apparatus, instrument work? What do you mean by any sort of terminology or jargon that was used? Do you think there is an application in industry for this knowledge or technique? And that question sort of says, like, how can we apply this to a specific area, or how does this apply to the real world even? Were there any books that helped you do your analysis or build whatever it is that you may have built? When did you start your project, or how much of the work did you do this year? Because some students may be continuing a project from a previous year. What is the next experiment to do in continuing this study? Are there any areas that we have not covered which you feel are important? And do you have any questions for me? So this is a good starting point. You can have the person that you're practicing with ask you these questions. And the great thing about working with other people is that they have their unique perspective. So they may even come up with different questions that are not even on this list, that could be something that a different judge is thinking about. So this is a great starting point. And again, to reiterate, you viewing your project and viewing it in the eyes of a judge can also be helpful, because you also might come up with questions that are specific to your project that are not on this list as well. So I'm going to go through the summary. So what we talked about today was we discussed practices for how to prepare for the interview. We gave an examples of what an elevator speech is, how you can prepare that 1-minute talk to the interviewers, and also advised how to dress for the interview process. Going back, here are some upcoming deadlines. The draft for the final project was due this week, but we're still accepting drafts and edits. This was to meet deadlines that are sooner for folks. So the Denver Metro Regional Science and Engineering Fair, their virtual presentation is due on Friday and needs to be uploaded to their science fair website by the 30th. So if you're participating in that science fair, please keep that in mind. And if you need help making any sort of edits, or if you would like feedback, please let us know. On February 1st, the SARSEF registration opens and will be open until February 22nd when it closes. February 10th is our ACE workshop, and other science fair registration deadlines for February. Oh, this is out of order. February 20th, which is a Friday, the San Juan, New Mexico Science and Engineering Fair registration closes. Online, it says that the February 27th is when the Four Corners Regional Science and Engineering Fair closes, but I haven't received any information. There isn't information about this science fair outside of Facebook, and all of their dates are for last year. So I'm not entirely sure if this is the actual deadline for the Four Corners Fair, but I'm going to continue to look into it And if you're close to this area, I might reach out to you about participating in this fair. Um, and then for SARSEF, the 28th is when the virtual science fair exhibition hall opens. And so that's when judges are already taking inventory of the different projects and starting to score them. On March 3rd is when the high school interviews are from 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And March 6th to 7th. 6th is when the poster setup is. The 7th is when the judging happens for the San Juan, New Mexico Science and Engineering Fair. So some of these are coming up pretty quickly. I think the regional fairs are coming up sooner than the larger fairs. I don't have the Native American or the National American Indian Science and Engineering Fair dates up here quite yet. I'm confirming those, but those are some important dates to keep in mind. They're also on the NASEP on a page document online. Continue working on the tasks that are inside of the research project guide if you're getting started. I know there's someone who sent me their pre-assignment this week, so yay, that's awesome. Wherever it is in your whatever step that you're on, we're willing to receive the the slides, the assignment to give feedback. So if you're making progress, that's the positive thing. A reminder for the save the date. So May 2nd is when we'll be having our closing banquet. And next workshop again is February 10th. Going back to what I said about the research project guide. So the secret of our success is that we never give up, and that's from Wilma Mankiller. And the projects, again, whatever part you're at, it's great that you're making progress, and those steps are important. So keep going on and working towards completing those projects. So opening up for questions. Feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat. I'm going to go back to the one about participating in science fairs locally and also wanting to do the presentation in person. So I recommended the American Indian Science and Engineering, the National American Indian Science and Engineering Fair. They do have that presentation in person, or that science fair in person if you're wanting to participate, but that goes back to it not being local because it takes place in Oklahoma. They do provide funding for folks to travel out there if that's something that you're interested in. You would need a chaperone, so like a parent or someone to go with you in order to participate. But again, it's not local. So to ask more information about the inability to participate in one locally, is that due to not being aware of a science fair that's within the community, or is it a timing issue? Because I would need a little bit more information to try to think of a solution. Got it. Okay, so trying to find ones that are local. Okay, so follow-up question. I'm assuming that there isn't going to be one hosted at your school. Is there one hosted at your school? Okay, so there isn't one at school. Um, so an option that we were given for SARSEF is if it's not local, but it's kind of close. If you wanted to participate in SARSEF, then that would be fine. An alternative could be presenting at your science class, or sometimes there's conferences that are like, or events in the community. There was a student one year who did, there was three different conferences that had happened. Um, One was like an environmental conference that was hosted over in Phoenix, and the students participated in like the poster project. So it wasn't necessarily a judging per se, but they participated in the poster presentations where they had their work on display and people came up and asked them questions. So if there's a conference like that happening in the area that could facilitate as a way to present your work. Again, there's that virtual science fair. Um, there's also the Arizona State Science and Engineering Fair. That one is in Phoenix. That one's in, I have to check the dates, but I think it's at the end of March. Were those questions or the responses helpful? Okay, great. And I'm going to make a note, and we can, if I come up with other ideas, then I can reach out to you about that. Any other questions? The Four Corners Fair. Let me pull that up right now. So I'm looking up New Mexico fairs. It says there's a Central New Mexico Regional Science and Engineering Fair. That's February. Oh, the entry deadline is February 6th here. I'll share my screen so it's a little bit clearer. So here are the New Mexico fairs. This one's in Albuquerque. This one's in Farmington. This one's in Grants. I think the one that you're asking for is the Four Corners Fair. It says the entry deadline is February 27th, and that these are the competition dates. But as you may see here, when I click the fair, it goes to a Facebook page, and I'm not seeing any current information about the fair. There is this email here. I believe that I may have emailed it already, but I'll send a follow-up email regarding this information, because for some of you, yeah, Grants may be closer than Farmington or Albuquerque, or even the fairs that are over in Arizona. This is the big fair, the New Mexico Science and Engineering Fair. Um, the one in the one in Phoenix. I'll pull that up. Let's see. There's the Sierra Vista Fair. This one's the one in Tucson. This is the Arizona Science and Engineering Fair. Entry deadline is March 11th, and then these are the competition dates, March 26th and 27th. Where can I view the videos of the Zoom meeting so I can see what I missed? Yes, we'll upload it to YouTube and we'll send the link in our email, or you may go to our webpage. So I think if you go to YouTube and then you go to NASEP, I think I can find it from our website actually. YouTube. Oh no, this is going to take us to the U of A one, but yeah, you basically look up UA NASEP, or you can go to this page here, research and then virtual workshops, and they're embedded on the website. So after this workshop's over and we have the video, we'll include it here. Great question. Any other questions? Any other questions? Oops. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, then you all may have a good evening. Sorry, I'm reading the chat right now. All right, I'll stay on. If folks have questions about their specific projects, I'll be here to discuss that with folks. But other than that, you may have a good rest of your evening. Have a good night.
Good night. Have a night night. Good night. I don't know.
See you, Brandon.